come that way. Well, 2 minutes.
2 minutes? I can do that.
Yeah. They want to wait 2 minutes after the stream starts.
Okay.
Rabah, we're going to invite everyone back to our house afterwards for the meal. Yeah, I have it. Yeah. 15 past. Yeah. Hi. Hi, Jonathan. Sorry? Another video. Okay. Well, the muzzle, no? Oh, wow. Double muzzle, though. I didn't know. I didn't know.
No, can we switch?
Street in a car.
Okay, I think we're going to start.
So this is the left, this side.
Yeah. Are we ready? מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לו אכסר, בנעוד שירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני, נפשי ישובב, ינחני במגלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי אלך וגיא צל מוות, לא ידע רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשענת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The words of the 23rd Psalm, a Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit. Guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming out this morning. And we also welcome everyone on the internet. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Rabah Aron Lieberman Z from Congregation Shaarey Zedek, and it's my great honor to be here officiating the funeral services for Aron Lieberman Z of blessed memory, who was also known to the Jewish people by his Hebrew name, Aron ben Yaakov Venacha, Zichrono Livracha. He was the son of Jacob and Nacha Lieberman of blessed memory, the husband of the late Todah Lieberman of blessed memory, the father of Jeff and Robin Lieberman, and Gary Lieberman and Janet Teranishi, the grandfather of Amy and Gabriel, Josh, Noah, Brooke, and Justin. Aron also had 7 brothers and 1 sister who died in the Holocaust. Aron passed away peacefully, surrounded by family, embraced by love, on June 7th, at the age of 99. Today, the world lost one more Holocaust survivor. And this is a loss we should all feel and mourn. We can watch a Holocaust movie, listen to recordings of testimonials, and read diaries to learn what Jews went through during the Holocaust, what led up to Nazi Germany attempting to wipe out an entire group of people, what it was like to live through it and eventually survive. There is also something powerful and something completely irreplaceable about hearing these stories in person. Being able to follow up with questions and getting to know people like Aron Lieberman of blessed memory, who lived through these atrocities. And especially because Aron didn't just survive the Holocaust, he overcame it. Because Aron didn't get stuck in the trauma. Don't get me wrong, he didn't forget what happened to him and his family there, but he didn't allow the evil he experienced to define his life and his future. Despite all, he continued being a nice person, who continued working hard, and who never said negative things about others. Aron didn't like to complain. He didn't even complain during the last 2 years of his life, where he was practically in isolation at the Simkin Center because of all the COVID restrictions. This trait of character was noticed by many people who appreciated Aron's kind character, especially during difficult times. And even though he lost all his family in Europe, he never cut ties with God. I'm sure he had many things he would have liked to say to his Creator. But Aron had the strength to remain a faithful Jew all of his life. He was a regular at the house of Ashkenazi in the north end of Winnipeg, celebrating there all the holidays and participating in services. The book of Job, a book which challenges traditional notions about God, is appropriate to quote when speaking about Aron Lieberman of blessed memory. Let me quote a couple of verses. There we read, "There are mines for silver and places where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth and copper is melted from rock. But where can wisdom be found? And where is the source of understanding?" And the rabbis added, "For when a person of wisdom dies, who can replace him?" Aron leaves behind invaluable and irreplaceable lessons of losing life and rebuilding it, creating a beautiful family from the ashes, and teaching us what true resilience looks like. To have a better understanding of the scope of Aron's life and legacy, I would like to invite now a few people to eulogize Aron Lieberman. So first I would like to start with Aaron's nieces, Shaarey and Debbie. If you can come to the microphone, please.
When I think of my Uncle Aron, the words that come to mind are survivor, determined, fighter, strong, loving, gentle, quiet, devoted, mensch, and one of a kind. Uncle Aron was a special man who survived against all odds and came out a true winner, a survivor in every sense of the word, who lived till almost 100. Growing up, we spent a lot of time with our family. Uncle Aron, while a quiet man, was always so happy to have his family around and spend time together. He was a devoted husband to my Auntie Todah, a wonderful father to his sons Jeff and Gary, and a loving grandfather to his 5 beautiful grandchildren who were everything to him. I remember coming to the house on Semple and Iris, and Uncle coming right to the door to welcome us immediately and ask how we were doing, would give us a hug and a kiss, and would make you feel so welcome. Even when I moved away and I would call to say hi, the first thing he would ask is how I was and when I was coming to visit. That always made me feel special. I never remember him complaining about anything. He was just happy with what he had, and having his loved ones around was a reminder of the things in life that really mattered, and he was so right. Dinner at his house was always special. I remember pulling up to the house, seeing him barbecuing in the driveway, or helping Auntie Dora in the kitchen after dinner, washing and drying the dishes with her like no other man I know. He was a true gentleman. Auntie Dora did not drive, but Uncle always took her wherever she needed to go. He was truly devoted to her. He raised 2 sons, my amazing cousins, Jeff and Gary, who are the nicest guys around, and had 5 grandchildren, Amy, Josh, Noah, Brooke, and Justin, all menches just like him. I know he was so proud of all of them, and he should be. I loved sleeping at their house when I was a child. Uncle was always spoiling us with treats and special things, and only raised his voice when Dana and I continued to giggle late into the night. But those memories are so special to me, and I will never forget them.
One of my very prominent memories of when I was young was Uncle Aron always used to have us over for barbecues. One of my core memories in life is always having dinner at either my Uncle Aron and Auntie Dora's or my Auntie Anne's or our house every Sunday. Every Sunday somebody would host. And at Uncle Aron's house, he would always make hot dogs, and they were always wrapped in this brown paper from the butcher's. And I thought it was a present for me when I was younger. And every time I would come to his house, he would show me the brown paper. And I think I was really a lot older until I realized it was just the hot dogs in there. But it was always our shtick that he would come to the door and he'd say, I have the brown paper. And he would stand outside on the driveway and barbecue for the whole family. And just so happy that everybody was there. As Debbie and I moved away, whenever we would come into town, we would let Jeff and Gary know, or my dad know, and usually right from the airport, our first stop would be to see Uncle Aron, and we'd sit in his room or sit there and have coffee or tea. But that was always so important to Debbie and I that was our first stop, and we really enjoyed just sitting there and, talking to him, and he'd still always ask us how we were doing and about all of our families, and he was always so interested in what was going on in other people's lives. He was also so generous with sharing whatever he had. His gifts were always the most generous. I remember after Auntie Dora died, there was a ring that I always liked of hers as a child, and I was always play with it. And the day after the funeral, he showed up at my parents' house on Mather's Bay with the ring, and I said, you didn't have to come the next day, and he said, but I wanted you to have it, and Auntie Dora wanted you to have it, and I wanted you to have it right away. So he drove all the way south just to give me that ring. He would give you whatever he had and happy to share it, no matter how large or small it was. Uncle Aron will be truly missed, a special man who always put his family first, a man with a huge heart that we will remember for the way he made you feel. and the smile he always had, his gentle manner, and the kind words. They always say in life they don't really remember what you did, but they remember how you made you feel. He always made me feel really special and loved. May you rest in peace, Uncle. We love you.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Aron's granddaughters, Amy and Brooke, to come to the microphone to eulogize their grandfather.
Hi everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm Amy and this is Brooke, and we are going to say a few words about our Zedek on behalf of his grandchildren. We are so fortunate to have countless memories with our Zedek, some from the time we were young and some from just recently. We wanted to share some of our happiest moments with you today. Growing up, Sunday evenings in the Lieberman family meant dinner at Dora and Aron's house. Not only was this a weekly highlight for me, but I could tell that this was a very special time for my grandparents as well. Being able to host the family each week brought so much joy to them. Family was always number one priority to Bobby and Zedek, and they are truly the reason why our family, both immediate and extended, are so close today. For most of my childhood, my grandparents lived in Garden City. I remember how they would drive all the way to the south end to pick up Josh and myself and drive us all the way back to the north end for sleepovers on Saturday nights. Although the drive was maybe only 25 minutes, it felt like the trek to the north end was hours long because, well, Zedek was not the fastest of drivers. He was a very careful driver, but I think he caught every single red light possible each time. I remember Bobby and Zedek coming up with car games for all of us to play because I can pretty much guarantee that Josh and I would whine about the long drive every time. Never once, though, did Zedek complain of us being too noisy. He clearly just loved having us around and spending time with his grandchildren. Once we arrived at their house, we had a very specific garage routine. Josh and I found it fascinating when my Zedek would drive his car into the garage. I really don't know why. So we would pull into the driveway, my Bobby would get out along with either Josh or myself, and one grandchild at a time would sit in the front passenger seat with Zedek as he drove the length of the driveway and into the garage. Then that grandchild would leave the car, Zedek would back out of the garage and pick up the next grandchild from the end of the driveway, and they would have their special moment sitting in the front passenger seat as he re-entered the garage. Though I'm not sure why we enjoyed this so much, my Zedek continued with this routine every time because it made us happy. He always put us first and did anything he could for us. Once Josh and I became a little older and moved on from the sleepover phase, Brooke, Justin, and Noah took over, and I know they had just as much fun with Bobby and Zedek as we did. One of the classic activities that all 5 of us Lieberman grandchildren took part in at our grandparents' house was playing make-believe restaurant in the bar in their basement. We would create a menu, the grandchildren were the cooks, and Bobby and Zedek would be the customers. Zedek would bring down empty drink pitchers and trays for us to carry the imaginary food so that our restaurant experience was as authentic as possible. Zedek would make sure to tell us that the food and the service was great. He was always so patient with us, even when we pretty much made a total disaster of the bar area and probably did not clean it up properly. When we were a little older, we were fortunate enough to be able to go on a couple family trips to Minneapolis. Gary, Brooke, Justin, Bobby, and Zedek would drive in one car, and my parents, Josh, Noah, and myself would drive in another. I remember going on the rides at the amusement park inside the mall and seeing Bobby and Zedek watching us having the time of our lives. To them, it didn't matter what we did while on vacation, as long as the grandchildren were having fun. I think these trips brought so much joy to my Zedek because having the entire family together was always so important to him. He loved watching us grow up and being a part of our lives. For Zedek, the only thing that mattered was being all together as a family. The last memory I wanted to share is just from a few years ago when Zedek lived at the Shaftesbury. Keeping the Sunday evening family dinner tradition going, we would sometimes go to Zedek's favorite Chinese restaurant, New Golden Inn. We would call him earlier in the day to tell him what time we'd pick him up for dinner. Usually he would be waiting for us at the front door, but there were a couple of times where we would pull up and Zedek was nowhere to be found. I remember asking the staff if they knew where Aron was, and they said, "Oh, Aron is having dinner in the dining room." Upon entering the dining room, I saw Zedek at his table having dinner with his friends. He would tell me that he had completely forgotten that we were picking him up. I could see how much he looked forward to meal times where he could socialize with his table group. He loved social gatherings at the Shaftesbury and never wanted to miss out on an evening with his table group friends. Not only was my Zedek a role model to me in so many ways, but he was also my hero. The way that he showed bravery, patience, generosity, compassion, and love for his family are all qualities I have admired about him for as long as I can remember. Before COVID, I would often spend Sunday afternoons visiting him at the Simpkins Center. We would take a walk to the front area, have a coffee together, and catch up on all that went on that week. Zedek, I will miss visiting you and spending such precious time together. I love you.
On behalf of Aron's grandchildren, it is extremely hard to believe that it is time to say goodbye to Zedek Aron. 11 years after the passing of my grandmother Dora, at 99.5 years old, our Zedek Aron finally gets to reunite with her and greet her with a warm hug. He was a simple, quiet man that lived a life enriched with his family. Family was most important to him, as he enjoyed any activity that revolved around bringing the family together. Food brings the Lieberman/Wise family together, and my Zedek especially enjoyed going for Chinese food. We were frequent members at the New Golden Inn on Pembina, as every Sunday night my Zedek would make sure that we carved out 2 to 3 hours of time to enjoy his favorite meal. I remember bringing my flashcards to the restaurant, reviewing my notes for an exam I had the next morning, while my dad had to go into the kitchen to make sure our table was restocked on waters. I remember the sleepovers that Noah, Justin, and I had at their house on Ira Street, with him and Bobby being the perfect team, always making us pancakes the next morning. They loved to spoil us grandkids with our favorite foods. Zedek would encourage our creativity, as we used to turn their bar in the basement into an imaginary restaurant. My Zedek would be our most regular customer, as he would pretend to love his scrambled eggs that we cooked for him in the form of golf balls. Not long after my Baba Dora passed away, my Zedek spent several years living at the Shaftesbury. I had the privilege of working at the Shaftesbury for a couple of years as a server and got to spend lots of time with him there. The Shaftesbury staff loved his presence, as he never complained and enjoyed the company of others. His eyes would light up when soup would arrive at his table and when he had the opportunity to socialize. Zedek taught me the importance of saying hello to strangers as we walked through the halls of the Shaftesbury and Simpkins Center. He knew this small gesture could brighten up a person's day. Even if that feeling lasted for a split second, he knew that it was the right thing to do. My Zedek lost his parents and siblings in the war. He started a new life with my Baba Dora and spent his life protecting his children and grandchildren from knowing the horrors of his past. I felt my strongest connection to his past at the age of 15, when my brother Justin and I had the experience of going on March of the Living. We visited Poland and the concentration camps to commemorate the Holocaust. My Zedek worked hard to provide a better life and a loving home for us all. My Zedek lived a full life and experienced an incredible amount of simchas in our family. He attended all 5 of his grandchildren's bar and bat mitzvahs and was even able to attend his eldest grandchild, Amy's, wedding. It is hard for me to believe everything that he will miss out on in the future, but knowing how proud he was of us and still is gives me comfort. I'm sure they are looking all over all of us right now, Bobby making her cinnamon cookies and Zedek smiling as he watches over us. He loved her and all of us more than anything, and he would be so incredibly happy watching the strong bond our family has and continues to have. He came from so little, and together he and my Baba paved the way for all of us. He's the strongest man that I know, so kind, so happy to be with his family and touch the lives of so many. Love you so much, and we'll miss you, Zedek.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to invite Jeff Lieberman to come to the microphone to eulogize his father.
Thank you, Rabbi. My brother Gary and I thank all of you that are here today and those that are watching the funeral live streamed through the Shaarey Zedek website. Our father, Aron, was born in 1922 in Piękno, Poland. His parents were Yaakov and Nacha. His brothers were Yosel, Abraham, Isaac, Moshe, and Itzik, and his sister was Franya. Aron's father, my grandfather, Yaakov, was a leader in the Jewish community of Piękno, and in 1939 the Nazis took him and 3 other community leaders and hung them on the street so as to send a message to the rest of the Jewish community. In the fall of 1940, when Aron was 18 years old, he was taken from his home and family. He never saw his family after that day. My father was first taken to the Monowitz concentration camp. He was later sent to the Posen concentration camp, then Auschwitz, Buna, and Buchenwald. The number tattooed on his arm is 142431. While in these camps, he was forced to do hard labor, including construction and repairing roads and buildings. If you refused to do the work, or if you couldn't, they would shoot you on the spot. He worked forced labor until he was liberated. Before the war ended, the Germans took approximately 1,500 prisoners out of Buchenwald and made them walk to Munich. Aron was among these 1,500 people. My father said that if you stopped walking for any reason, the Nazis would shoot you and leave you to die. Approximately 500 people survived the walk and reached Munich. Aron was liberated in Munich in 1945. He didn't discuss with our family very much of what happened to him while he was in the concentration camps. It is truly hard for me to understand what his life was like on a daily basis and how he had to fight and struggle to survive for almost 5 years. My mother did tell me that my father did have some terrible nightmares, and he would scream while he was sleeping. After the war, Aron found out that his whole family was killed by the Nazis. In 1946, he went from Germany to Amsterdam, Holland, where he lived until 1954. In 1954, he had an opportunity to go to either Israel or Canada, and he chose Canada. We believe that the Canadian Jewish Congress sponsored him to Canada, so he took a ship across the ocean and landed in Montreal on September 23, 1954. He was told to come to Winnipeg, so he boarded a train to Winnipeg. He couldn't speak any English, but he found a porter on the train, Jack Levitt, who was from Winnipeg and who spoke Yiddish. Jack gave Aron his phone number and told him to call him after he settled in Winnipeg. Aron eventually called Jack Levitt and got together with him and his family. Jack's family became Aron's family, and we are very blessed by the generosity of the Levitt family. The Levitts introduced my dad to my mother, Dora Wise, who was born in Winnipeg, and they were married from June 1st, 1958, until my mother passed away in June 2011. After my parents were married, my mother's family became my father's family, and as everyone has said so far, family was everything to my dad. The closeness between the families, my aunts and uncles, Joe and Ann Schmelnitsky, Julius and Karen Wise, and Israel and Marion Wise, was as strong a bond as possible, and this followed with their children, my cousins Jerry Schmelnitsky, Gavin, Shaarey, and Debbie Wise, and Francine and Elaine Wise. Our large family had dinner together almost every Sunday night, and we celebrated all of the Jewish holidays together. I have many great memories of our family get-togethers, especially at our annual Hanukkah party, where there would be a mountain of gifts that were given out one by one so that everyone could watch each gift being opened. In 1980, I visited Israel with my good friend Hart Kaplan, and almost by accident, I found out that my father had cousins that survived the Holocaust and were living in Tel Aviv. I met the Goldman family, and this began an amazing love and friendship with my cousins, Jackie and Judy, and Alon and Dorit Goldman and their families. Since then, my parents visited Israel a couple of times, and my cousins have traveled to Winnipeg to celebrate our family simchas. My father loved his cousins in Israel and really enjoyed the times that they were able to spend together. After he came to Winnipeg, my father worked hard so that he could provide the best that he could for our family. We didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up, but we lived in a loving home, and Gary and I didn't really know that we didn't have much money. We did have lots of love and a close-knit family, and that was most important. My father worked hard so that he could help provide Gary and I with the opportunity to go to university and better ourselves, as he just did not have many opportunities when he was growing up. Gary and I have great memories of watching wrestling and then hockey night in Canada every Saturday night with our dad while we were growing up. My dad loved hockey and was a big fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. My friends loved coming over to play ball hockey or to fool around in our basement, and my dad loved when they were over. My friends called him Mr. Lebo. While it's hard to imagine how my father could believe in God after all that he and his family went through, my father loved taking my brother and I to the Ashkenazi synagogue for the high holidays and observing the other Jewish holidays throughout the year. He was very proud of Gary and my bar mitzvahs. He was also very proud when I married Robin and when Gary married Diane. He just adored our children, and as Amy and Brooke mentioned, our children have many great memories of time spent with my parents. Our kids slept over there on many Saturday nights, and this helped create an everlasting bond between my parents and the kids with their cousins. My dad was so happy when Amy married Gabriel, and Gabriel became another of his grandchildren. My father had a pretty strong accent, and his English often mixed in a little Yiddish as part of his English words. Robin or my kids would always say that they didn't understand some of what he was saying, but after growing up with it, I knew what all of those jumbled English Yiddish words meant. My parents had a very special relationship with my in-laws. They got along so well, and everyone was so happy to get together for special occasions or to just get together. Yesterday, my mother-in-law, Mira Buckwald, told me that my dad was the kindest and sweetest person. And that truly was my dad. After going through all that he went through and what he saw and suffered, he was still the nicest and most kind and compassionate person that I have ever known. He would offer to help anyone that he thought needed help. Around 12 years ago, my parents sold their house and bought a condo. Shortly after that, my mother's health declined and she passed away. We always thought that my father wouldn't be able to fend for himself without my mother, but he surprised us and he actually did quite well. However, he was lonely in his condo, and after a couple of years he moved to the Shaarey, where he enjoyed living there for around 4 years. After that, he needed more help and he moved to the Simkin Center. He lived at the Simkin Center for approximately 4 years, and the staff all called him Papa Aron. The first couple of years at Simkin were fantastic. It was a really social place, and my dad knew a lot of people there. Unfortunately, COVID hit hard, and while the Simkin staff did their very best, and they were excellent, there were long periods of isolation, and many times where the only visitors allowed to visit with my dad were my brother and I. My dad actually got COVID a couple of months ago and amazingly recovered at age 99. However, his health began to decline a couple of weeks ago, and he peacefully passed away in his sleep on Tuesday evening. I have told a number of people this week that his death is sad, and I will miss him so much, but we are so fortunate because after he came to Canada, he met my mother, and he lived a long, happy life that was filled with great health and much love. I know that if I was offered a contract that said I would live to almost 100 years old, and I was in good health most of my life, and that I would pass away peacefully in my sleep, I would sign that contract now. Dad, Gary and I and our families love you so much. We will always remember you as the good, loving person that you were and are. We thank you for all that you've done for us, and we aspire to be the mensch that you were.
Thank you, Jeff. May the memory of Aron Lieberman be a source of inspiration, blessing, and comfort. Let us all say, Amen. The memorial prayer. El male rachamim, shochem bameroimim, hametze menucha nechona, tachat kanfei, hashechina ומעלות קדושים, קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת אהרון בן יעקב ונאחה שהלך לעולמו בעבור שאנו מתפללים ועד הצקרת נשמתו בגן עדן בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו לכם בלרחמים אסתירהו וסדר כנפיו לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים החיים את נשמתו אדוני ונחלתו ואנוח ושלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Aron Lieberman, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. Please join me now in the recitation of the words of comfort, the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Itgadal ve'itgadash shemei Rabah, ve'almad yivirach chilutei, ve'yamlich malchutei, ve'chai echon u'vyom echon, וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה, ברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמה וימרו אמן. יהא שלום הרבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו אמן. עושה שלום עם רומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו אמן. המקום ינחם אתכם בתוך שרב לציון בירושלים. May God bless you and comfort you. And let us all say one more time, Amen. In a few minutes, we are going to proceed with the burial part of this service. According to the rabbis, this is a tremendous act of kindness, an act of loving kindness, an act of chesed. So everybody is going to have the opportunity to come forward, pick up a shovel, and participate in the burial, placing some earth on top of Aaron's coffin. But before that, I have a few announcements. First, I would like to announce that immediately after this service is over, everybody is invited to partake of the meal of consolation. This is going to be at Jeff and Robin's house, 15 Glastonbury Boulevard. And again, everybody is invited to come and participate. The Shiva, though, is going to be private. The family would like to extend special thank you to the Simpkins Center for all the good care they provided for Aron during the last 4 years of his life, and especially during the last 2 years during COVID. And also special thanks, heartfelt thank you to Haviva Tabak for all the prayers she recited after Aron's passing. Greatly appreciated by the family. And now I would like to invite Jeff, Gary, to come forward to be the first one to put some earth on top of your father's coffin. After them, the rest of immediate family is invited to come and do it, and immediately after, everyone else. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out, and thank you, everyone on the internet, for tuning in this morning.